Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Before I start today's video, I just want to take some time to welcome everyone who's new on my channel. Hello, my name is Johanna. I'm 23 years old and I'm currently enrolled in the university outside of Yokohama in Japan. From 2017 to last year, I went to Fukuoka Foreign Language College, a Japanese language school in southern Japan. And right now I'm making videos about what it's like going to Japanese language school, what you have to think about, and also life in a Japanese university and generally things about life in Japan. Yesterday, I posted on my Instagram asking for questions about what it's like going to Japanese language school, and I actually got more questions than I thought. So I have one question from YouTube and a few questions from Instagram that I want to answer in this video. If you have any other questions about what it's like going to Japanese language school, please leave a comment down here or send me a message on Instagram and I will either respond directly or make another Q&A video about this topic. So with that said, let's jump into the questions. So my first questions for today actually came from YouTube and Soya Stuffs. Hello. The first thing he's asking is 400,000 yen enough for 1 year? So I'm assuming that you're not counting in this school tuition fee because that's already way past 400,000 yen for 1 year. But my quick and easy answer would still be no, it's not enough. So let's say you're living in an apartment or a dormitory where the monthly rent is 40,000 yen. Only the rent for 1 year would be almost 500,000 yen. And even if you exclude your tuition fee and your rent and bills, I would still say it's pretty tough to live on just 400,000 yen for 1 year. When I lived in Fukuoka and my rent was 40,000 yen and I tried to keep down my bills as much as possible, I survived on 1 month for about 100,000 yen. But at that time, I didn't buy anything, I didn't go shopping. I always ate pretty cheap food, which actually affected my health in a bad way. And I couldn't go traveling anywhere. So I did survive on 100,000 yen for 1 month, but that was a very, very frugal life. So it kind of depends on what you're planning to do with the money, but my easy and short answer would be no, it's not enough. So the next question is, how many months after I enroll, I guess, can I get a part-time job in Japan as a fresher? Well, you actually don't have to wait months. You could get a job just a few days after arriving here in Japan. So the main thing you need in order to get a part-time job here in Japan is a work permission from the immigration. So in my case, my language school actually sent me a document that I filled out before going. And when I came to the airport in Japan, I just gave the document to the immigration office. And then they gave me a stamp in my residence card that means I'm allowed to work here in Japan. Now, another thing is, of course, the language barrier. If you're coming here with not a lot of Japanese skills, you can still get a job, but it will probably be a job where you don't need to use a lot of Japanese, like working in a factory, packing bento boxes, or something simple like that. I know most language schools have a service where the staff will help you to maybe make phone calls and arrange an interview and just help you all the way to get to your part-time job. And if you already have some Japanese skills, you can still go through school and try to find a part-time job through that, or just go by yourself, look online, or just walk around and ask around if there's anyone who wants to hire you. So yes, you can get a job pretty fast if you just have the permission from the immigration office, and depending on your language skills, the jobs you can do may differ as well. Okay, so the third question from Soyab Stuffs is, after completing the Japanese course, can we get a job there with high school degree? Again, my short and easy answer would be no. You could find a place that would hire you, but the thing is that you need a company to sponsor you with a work visa, and most companies are legally not allowed to give you a work visa if you don't have a bachelor's degree or at least 5 to 10 years of work experience in the specific field that you want to work in here in Japan. So yeah, if you don't have a bachelor's degree, but you have 5 to 10 years of work experience in a specific field, you could get a job with just a high school degree, but if not, it's going to be pretty hard for you to get a job here in Japan. Okay, so now moving on to my Instagram questions. So my first question comes from Koti and it says, how is the class structure? So in my school, we had a weekly schedule with different classes on different days dedicated to different books or different parts of the JLPT. So for example, in the first class on Monday, we would have a full lesson of just grammar, and in the next class, we would have conversation or something like that. We would usually have some kind of short 10 to 20 minute reading or listening exercise in the beginning of the class too, especially before the JLPT exams. I actually got another question from Koti, which was if we had any chance to interact with Japanese students at my my language school? And yes, we did. So Fukuoka Foreign Language College, the language school that I went to, is actually not a pure language school, but it's a vocational school, in Japanese, a senmongakko. And so it offers programs in business, tourism, preparation for university, and the Japanese program that I went to, and also an English program for Japanese students. So the schedule for the Japanese students who studied English and for us was different. So we didn't actually meet during breaks or anything like that, but we would always meet in the lobby after they finished class and right before we started our classes. And so if you wanted to get to know the Japanese students, you could just go up to them and talk to them. And they were pretty curious about us as well, since they were studying English and wanted someone to conversate in English with. So yes, we had opportunities to make Japanese friends in my language school. So the next question comes from Ellis Sui. And it says, do language schools provide short-term visas? I heard only about 6 months or 1 year student visa. So yes, the shortest student visa you can get is 6 months. But if you want to go on a 3, 4, 5 month program, you could come here on a tourist visa. Depending on what country you're from, you might have to apply for a tourist visa, or for me as a Swedish person, I can just go there for up to 90 days without doing anything. And so if you're studying for less than 3 months, the most common way is to just not apply, or just apply for tourist visa and live on the tourist visa for the time you're in Japan. If, however, you're staying for longer than 90 days, you have to exit the country, perhaps go to South Korea or some other country that's nearby, and then you have to re-enter the country one more time to get another 90 days of tourist visa. So it might be a little inconvenient, but that's the way that many people do who are studying here for less than 6 months. So there is this language school in Fukuoka called GenkiJacs that offers programs for just a few weeks, up to I think 1 or maybe 2 years. And so I went to their website to check if they had any information about visas for students who are studying for less than 3 months or less than 6 months. And it turned out that they have a lot of really useful information about different requirements for different countries, and tourist visa, and another visa called a visa waiver. I'm not really sure what that is, but I'm going to post the link to their website in the description box. So if you're interested, please check that out as well. Okay, so my next question comes from Mishi Marie, and she just said, everything, things you don't expect. Well, there are quite a lot of things you don't expect when coming to Japan. And when I came to Fukuoka, I had already been in Japan for 10 months a few years earlier as a high school exchange student, so I did know some things already. But one thing, not necessarily language school related, that surprised me was how nice elderly people were to me as a foreigner. I don't know, I think when I was still in Sweden, I had read online that Japanese people could be a bit racist towards foreign people, and I guess especially other Asian people, like Chinese people, who historically have had a bad relationship with Japan. And I kind of assumed, or was a little worried, that I would be treated or viewed in a bad way by elderly people when I came to Japan, but that has not been the case at all. So many elders here in Japan are treating me in such a nice way, and they can actually be the ones who ask the most questions and show the most interest in me as a foreigner. Like, for example, when I was working in a restaurant in Fukuoka, I would often have older people ask me questions about where I was from or what I was doing in Japan. So that was actually something that was kind of unexpected, the way I have been treated by elders here in Japan. And I love Japanese, like, old people. They're so cute. Another thing I did not expect going to a language school was all of the many reasons why people come to study Japanese. Like, before coming, I guess I just kind of assumed that people would come to Japan to study Japanese because they like Japan, they liked anime, or like for hobby, or maybe they wanted to work, or I don't know. I didn't think a lot about it. But when I actually came here and talked to a lot of people, I realized how many different people wanted to do different things with their degree in Japanese. Like, some people came here to learn Japanese just so they could work to provide money for their families in their own countries. Some people came here because they wanted to pursue an acting career in Japan, and some people wanted to become manga artists. So there are so many different reasons why people come to study in a Japanese language school, and it's really cool to follow all their journeys and hear their stories. That was definitely a really positive thing and unexpected thing that I noticed when I came to my language school. So the next question is from Ijaiji. Sorry. Do you think an N5 learner can reach N1 in 6 months in a language school? What's your realistic estimation? I do not think it's realistic to think that you can pass N1 after just 6 months in a language school. I mean, just thinking about how much you need to learn in those 6 months. Like, you would have to learn maybe around 10 kanjis per day and not forget about them. And actually, I was looking at my N1 grammar book, and it does say that you can go through the book in 45 days, but that still means you need to go through one whole grammar book in a month, and you have to remember the grammar, understand it, and come to a level where you can at least kind of use it. And that's not taking into account the reading, the listening, and all the vocabulary you need to learn. I'm sorry, but if you're not a super language genius and have a lot of free time, I don't think it's realistic to pass the N1 in just 6 months. However, for me personally, it took about 2.5 years of pretty intense Japanese studies in Japan to pass the N1, and I do think that you could do it faster if you're smarter than me. I'm not a particularly super smart or person or language genius or anything. So I would say if you study pretty intensely, you could probably do it in 1.5, 2 years. Like, if you're really studying hard and maybe even living in Japan at the same time. And if not, maybe 3, 4, 5 years if you're still studying hard but maybe don't have as much time to study every day. Just don't expect to pass in 1 in 6 months. Okay, next question comes from Paula, what's your Instagram name? Isaac25. Hi, Paula. So Paula asks, what nationalities are the students? I'm not going though. Yeah, because you already speak Japanese, girl. So the nationalities of the students actually depend on what school you go to. My school was very international, and I think we had around 30 different countries represented at my school. There were a lot of Southeast Asian people. We had like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Southern America. We had European people, Swedish, English, French, Spanish, Italians. We had students from Africa. We had students from Australia. We had students from basically everywhere. But I know that in a lot of other language schools, the nationalities were pretty focused on one specific area. Like, some language schools would only have Western people, some language schools would mostly have Southeastern people or Middle Eastern people. And that was the case for some other schools I know about in Fukuoka. But for my school, we had people from literally all over the world. Next question is from Sara Vennergrund, and she says, from a scale from 1 to 10, how much did you miss your amazing twin sis while going to language school? Well, a lot, of course, but she actually came visiting me in language school, so I guess I was fine. Hey, Sara! Okay, so next up, I got 3 questions from the same person, and it is Mao Kun Owner on Instagram. So the first question is, can you reach Japanese fluency after your studies? Well, first of all, it depends on the level of your Japanese when you're entering the language school. So for me, I was already in between N4 and N3 when I entered my language school, which means that I directly advanced to the most high-level class in the first year, and that gave me the possibility to study up until N1 before I graduated. But if you start from 0 when you enter the language school, the most realistic level of the JLPT to pass is N2. Now, seeing the students in my language school who started from scratch, I did notice that the Chinese students generally advanced a bit faster since they already had a head start with the kanji. But reaching fluency in 2 years of language school, I mean, I've lived 3.5 years in Japan and put a lot of time into studying Japanese, and I'm even studying in Japanese in a Japanese university at the moment. And even I don't consider myself fluent yet, even though I've passed N1 already. I don't really know what fluency is, but I for sure know that I'm not there yet, so I don't really know how to answer that question. But one thing I can say for sure is that even though you start from scratch when you enter your Japanese language school, if you study really hard and put a lot of effort into it and study for 2 years, you will probably be able to pass the N2 level. So the next question is, are you well prepared for the JLPT? Yes! Oh yes! Most of the books we used in class were focused on JLPT, and we had a lot of just JLPT classes, and especially the months leading up to the JLPT exam in July and in December, the classes were heavily focused on JLPT, and we would have so many different drills in listening and reading and just do things every day in order for us to just prepare and sharpen our skills before the exams. So for sure, you get really prepared for the JLPT. And the last question from this person is, for intensive schools, do you still get to have free time? Yes, you do. I think the thing that makes intensive schools more time consuming than not so intensive schools is the amount of homework you get and also the amount of revision you have to do after each class. But still, you only study for like 4 or 5 hours every day, so you still have a lot of free time, especially in weekends, to go and have fun, go to karaoke, go traveling, or do whatever you want. So the next question comes from JF2120, and he asks, were most of your friends foreigners at first? How did you meet Japanese friends there? So when I came to Fukuoka, since I had already lived in Japan for 10 months as a high school exchange student, the only people in Japan I knew at that time were Japanese people. But enrolling into my language school and moving into my dormitory, I definitely made more foreign friends than Japanese friends for sure. Most of my Japanese friends that I met in Fukuoka, I either met in my dormitory because there were some Japanese people living there as well, in my school because we had, like I said before, some Japanese students studying there, and also in church. So my next question is from Sneafication. Hey Snea, I hope you're doing well. She asks, can you write exams in Romaji? No! So now we only have 2 questions left, and both of them came from Caitlin_Oct27. And the first question she had for me was, is much English spoken in classes or among the students? Now, in my language school, and I'm sure most other language schools as well, we were not allowed to use English in class, and most of our Japanese teachers did not know English anyway, so we could not conversate with the teacher in English, and we were not allowed to talk amongst each other in English either. But since there were a lot of Western students and students who knew English in my school, we would always speak English before class and after class and in between the breaks as well. There were, of course, students that did not know English, and with them I would always speak in Japanese since that was the only language we could communicate in. But I definitely spoke a lot of English every day as well. So the last question for today's Q&A is, did you have to have a place to live, like an apartment, etc., before enrolling or joining the school? So when you arrive to the airport in Japan and you go to the immigration, you have to give them an address for where you're going to live. And the way I did was I actually applied to a dormitory connected to my school when I was applying for the school itself. So for me, my living was already decided when I came. I'm actually not sure if you have to. I think that some people who didn't want to live in a dormitory rented an Airbnb or something like that, and from there searched for an apartment when they actually came to Japan. So I don't think you necessarily need to have a dorm or apartment contract when coming, but you definitely need some kind of hotel or Airbnb or an address to give to them. It can be staying with a friend or someone you know. You just basically need to give them an address and I think a phone number as well for where you're going to stay after arriving in Japan. So that's all for the Q&A for today. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions on YouTube and Instagram. I did not expect to get these many questions, so I'm really happy that I was able to answer different questions about different things about language schools and coming to Japan. If you have any other questions about life in Japan, going to Japanese language school or a Japanese university, please leave a comment asking me anything or send me a message on Instagram and I will reply to you directly, or perhaps make another video like this. As always, thank you for watching and I will see you in my next video. Bye!